Listening, and welcome to our fifth episode of RegTech Live with Clause Match. The aim of these sessions is to provide you with a 10-minute live discussion around technology and compliance, speaking with the leading industry experts every Thursday lunchtime. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by Nirvana Farhadi. Nirvana, thank you for taking the time to speak today.
It's an absolute pleasure, Freddie. Thank you so much.
Would you mind giving yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. So I'm Nirvana Farhadi, and I guess I've been one of the pioneers in the regulatory technology space within financial services over the few years. I'm an author for the past few years as well. I've been working at Hitachi, heading up their regulatory technology business.
Great. So you've been keeping busy.
Very busy, just to say the least. Yeah.
So, with everything that's going on right now, what have been some of the key regulatory challenges that you've observed, and have they been reprioritized? Have you actually got an experience of how these changes have occurred?
I think one of the key things, I mean, obviously, I'm actually based in the US at the moment, so I'm kind of seeing it from a US lens with the lockdown and everything that's been happening. And one of the things that I've really noticed is the scams and the amount of attacks and cyber criminal activities that have increased. And really, the measures in place were not, I think, prepared so well for people working from home and in the way that we've been forced to do so. I think in a few years' time, when people turn around and kind of say, who led the digital transformation of your organization? Was it A, the CEO, B, the CTO? I think it would be C, COVID-19. It's given us an accelerated timeline in getting things done, having to do it out of necessity now rather than it being nice to have, so that's kind of what I've seen happening. And especially with regulations, not just in financial services, we're seeing this across the board. Obviously, at my role at Hitachi, I observed other sectors too, such as healthcare, oil and gas and what have you. So those sectors, they all have regulations which are applicable to them and have been affected too. So it's interesting times.
Definitely. And you're completely right. It's, agnostic to the regulator. There's still going to be issues around data privacy, information. How can RegTech help solve some of these challenges?
One of the issues, and I've spoken about this before, Freddie, is normally what happens is, the proverbial hits the fan, as did, a good example is the financial crisis, for example. And then we had a heavy load of regulations that came out constantly, one after the other, swamping firms, having them spend enormous amounts of money after the fact. Often these regulations come out after the fact. It's like a fireman kind of running into a house that's burnt to the ground, holding the hose with the water still running. It's happened. And often these regulations overreach themselves, and they're fighting the wars of yesterday. My point in saying this is, we can better prepare ourselves. Nobody can predict the future. I mean, I couldn't have predicted that we're going to be hit by a global pandemic, although Bill Gates might, but he's on a different level than I am, So it's impossible to predict, but it's very easy to be able to, and we have the capabilities now to use these RegTechs to actually put procedures in place to ensure that compliance is embedded by design in our products and offerings right from the get-go in the product, so that we can actually preempt for some of these things coming up down the line. And I think that's what RegTech affords. RegTech was commonly, it's everyone keeps saying, oh, it's a buzzword, it's something that's trendy for now, and I think it's here to stay. We need to get our heads around that, and actually, as we're forced more and more into these kind of strange working environments, and I don't foresee us getting back to normal as quick as everyone thinks we will be. In fact, Germany are now looking at the legal right to enable people to be able to work from home if they want to now going forward. So these RegTech solutions, etc., can help to mitigate risk. So, for example, for people who are, let's have a look at what's going on right now. We are telecommuting, right? Last week I was supposed to be at a conference in New York, but it was cancelled, so we had to do a webinar, and that was fine. And many people in a lot of industries that previously prohibited it are now having to work from home. Bankers, aerospace engineers, almost everybody in the world, teachers, so people are having Zoom meetings and all sorts of, kind of team meetings and what have you. So that's all being done remotely. Other things that have changed for us are, on demand. Everything is now on demand for food and services. You can't go to a restaurant, so you've got to deliver it. So everything is coming to you now. Even talking to your doctor and your healthcare provider is done virtually these days. So that's impacting the insurance sector in a way where previously they wouldn't pay for remote visits, as it were. Now they have to do that. It's impacted everything. Virtual events, that's another thing that's been impacted. Again, as I mentioned, nobody can every gatherings are prohibited, I guess, and how is that going to go on going forward? Companies might decide that's not what they want to do. So when you look at this, and it's very difficult to kind of predict, is everyone going to go back to normal again or not? But certainly I think for the foreseeable future and well into 2021, I think we're going to be seeing the impacts of this. And I honestly think that the way we work now, it's changed. It's going to change, and it's going to be a different world for all of us. And using these RegTech companies and solutions, and I think working collaboration, with the ecosystems and the stakeholders is key to figure out, well, what can we do best? Because when I spoke about telecommuting, for example, working from home, you're using the cloud as well to share documents with colleagues and collaborate with colleagues. How is that secure? If you're in a compliance department, how are you able to monitor that someone's doing what they should be doing? It's easy to do it on site in an office because you've got those things in place. But when you're not there and you don't have those, it becomes problematic.
So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think what's happening right now has been a very effective but unwelcome impact assessment on how businesses carry out their day-to-day activities. But you also touched on something really interesting at the end. It's also really key around how the RegTech vendor or service provider collaborates with financial institutions. And this is something, I spend most of my time doing, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on creating effective collaboration between compliance and RegTechs? How can this area be improved?
I hope that the view of financial institutions, especially the more, I guess, traditional ones, has changed, and I think it has been forced to change and be accelerated. They need to be a bit more pragmatic now, especially that this has happened towards RegTechs. Before it was just like, well, it's an interesting project, prove you can do this. We'll look into this and research it and see what's happening. But I think clearly the circumstances, as I mentioned, has ensured that our timeline to this transformation is accelerated. Now, collaboration, I think one of the challenges I see for the RegTechs right now, especially with the job cuts and the budget cuts that have happened, not just as a result of this pandemic, but was already happening in organizations, is the sales cycle for them is going to be an issue. It's going to be a lot longer because budgets are not in place. People have not put measures in place to preempt for any of this. So that's going to be an issue for them. However, I think what's definitely needed is it's the view that they're just vendors and it's just another thing that they're going to sell to us. That needs to be eradicated. There is a reason and a purpose for a regulatory technology solution, and that's to help automate, take away your resource burdens, your compliance burdens, and really embed, like I said, ethical, humane technology at the design phase of the product so that you can service your clients a lot better. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
I hope so.
One of the things that I constantly drill to clients or prospects is there's no point in us helping you unless it makes you more effective, efficient, and solves the regulatory requirement that you're trying to solve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it completely resonated with me. What does the future look like, whether it's the regulatory landscape or just the future of technology? And has this current situation been a stimulus to make this change faster?
I think definitely, like again, accelerated timeline, it's been huge for us in terms of, now everyone has to work from home, not just getting over the technical hurdles, it's also learning a new culture, a new rhythm of interacting with your colleagues and, video conferencing with people and doing things differently than you used to. And that's going to take some time for us to adapt to and get used to that. I think one of the things that I'd like to touch on briefly as well, which came to mind just now, is that, you need to remember another hurdle for us is, in Europe, for me, it was a lot easier and quicker to access technology here. But in the US, it's such a vast country. And you got to remember that not everybody has the same bandwidth to work from home or the same reach that they need. And just simple things like that. You have to have kind of, equitable access to technology so that communities are enabled to be able to move forward with that. So that's definitely going to be a challenge. The future of work is definitely going to change for us, the way we interact, not just work, going to the movie theaters. I mean, who's been to a cinema? Maybe old drive-through movie theaters are going to come like back in the 50s and 60s, where you drive up and just sit in your car and watch a movie. I know they're trying to do that again here. So that'll be interesting. Again, the teaching sector, that's all going to change. So it's not just work and financial services and banking. Everything has changed. Everything has changed, and we have to be adaptable. Leadership have to be adaptable to that, and it's a cultural mind shift and mindset that needs to be implemented through the business. It's no longer, we've ticked the box. It's not a tick box activity that you can do. You have to be able to make sure that this digital transformation happens accordingly. And it's not something, once you've done it, you can leave it and walk away from. It's continuous, and it has to be a part of the mindset and the structure and fabric of your organization. And I guess going forwards, I think, we're going to see a lot of changes, and the impact and outfall of this, not just in terms of technology, but economically for us, we're going to see the repercussions, I think, well into the next year or so. I'm hoping it doesn't last that long, but it's a favorite quote of mine from Warren Buffett that says, it's when the tide goes out, we see who's been swimming naked. So, we'll see what kind of comes out of this.
No, definitely. Thank you so much for speaking today, and in a very short amount of time sharing lots of insights. I think just to summarize, we've touched on, I think, 3 key things. How can we improve the relationship between RegTechs? And I think it's not just RegTechs, technology and large enterprise businesses like financial institutions. What are some of the key regulatory challenges? So touch on data privacy and why businesses, when they're moving to distributed business models, how can we ensure the right controls are in place to mitigate all of these risks? And then what are some of the barriers to implementing RegTech, and how can we try and solve those? Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Comments.
Absolutely. Just one final thing, if that's okay, Freddie, and just to summarize, is that the relationship between the RegTechs and organizations has to be improved, in that the RegTechs need to understand the line of business of the organizations. And that's often a disconnect that I find a lot, where, vendors go in, they don't get the line of business, and they just want to sell a product. And that's where banks or financial institutions have a lack of trust. So again, collaboration is key. Understanding the pain points is key. And I'll shut up now.
No, thank you so much again, and hopefully everyone listening found that interesting. Please join us again next.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.